Colin Kaepernick, you are a disgrace. You sat during the national anthem to protest racism in America. You are promoting Black Lives Matter propaganda instead of the truth. Racism, oppression, really? Look in the mirror, pal. Your life proves America is not racist. Racism didn't stop you from being adopted by a white couple. Racism didn't stop you from using your God-given talents to become an NFL quarterback. Racism didn't stop you from signing a $114 million contract. You rejected reality and adopted propaganda. Your actions have insulted an untold number of Americans that fought and died for freedom. The freedom that has allowed you to pursue your dreams. Colin Kaepernick, your life story shows America is exceptional, not racist.
Well, good morning. You're listening to Live with Lou. Welcome, all you tweakers out there in Olivehurst and Linda. Just roll over and fire up a blunt, and everything's going to be all right. We're going to be here from 9 to noon. And that's be me, Lou, and Leon. And Leon's on the other side of the glass. He's a product of the Yuba County Career Preparatory Charter School over in Marysville, and he's over here making this thing happen here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just here talking for 3 hours, and he's making sure everything works. This is part of the Obama resistance. We thought we would be done with that resistance, but we realized when Obama left office that he was going to try to pull off a revolution. You know, he's trying to overthrow everything that produced all the millions of dollars he's got in his pocket right now. So we're part of the Obama resistance and the Trump revolution. So we're happy you're listening, and you can call us today. We're live, so you could call us at 530-742-5555. And if you are having trouble tuning in, if it's a little scratchy out there where our signal falls to the ground, you could go on the website at KMYC Radio, that's KMYCradio.com, and click on the Listen Live button there. Last Saturday, I was talking about a guy named Bobby Conner who is kind of a rascal that was converted years and years ago by Jesus and changed him from a lawbreaker to a law abider, and from a violent person to a man of peace. And it's interesting. Some people, you know, I've been doing this church thing for about 40 years, and not only the Bible says it, but you can actually see it happen. People have different gifts, and it's fascinating to see the gifts work in people's lives. And so Bobby Conner is a prophet, and there's been national and international phenomenon that has occurred that he predicted would happen. So last year, when it was just dry as bones in Sacramento Valley, Northern California particularly, and there was no rain in sight, no meteorologist was going to even suggest that there was going to be a rainstorm coming. Water police are running up and down the streets, citing people for using water. And the water rates are ridiculous in Marysville. One Saturday night, right in the middle of a message out at Glad Tidings where he was visiting, he stopped and said there is going to be a water miracle happen in Northern California, and left it at that. He said, watch for it. And it indeed happened. It started in March of last year, and it just kept pouring. And so he just was coming back this last Saturday night. He came and spoke at a women's conference, and so he was speaking along. I was sitting in the meeting, and he stopped and he said that we all needed to write the President of the United States and thank him for his work. And you know, it's just like a lot of us, we have maybe something happens and we think kind thoughts, or we hope something works out good for somebody that's going through a hard time, but we don't really do anything about it. We just think about it, but thinking about stuff doesn't really get anything done. Sometimes it's a beginning of getting something done, but a lot of times it doesn't get anything done. So Bobby said, hey, everybody go home and either write a card or letter and thank Trump for doing a good job. Now, for those who don't think he's doing a good job, you can just put your mind on pause right now, or you can change another channel, another station. But I think it's important. There's a lot of pressure right now in the country, and I'm going to suggest a couple other things after I'm going to give you a way to contact the president. So get something to write with, and I'll give it to you in just a second. But I think it's important to, he also said to pray for the president, which I've been doing, and I encourage you to do the same. The Bible says that we should pray for our leaders. Doesn't even say when we agree with them. It just says pray for them. But people can become discouraged. Even the strongest people and the sharpest people can become discouraged when you have the media, Hollywood, both parties, Republican and Democrat, and the intelligentsia in the university campuses all either making up fake news or telling one lie after another. So I'm going to give you the address where you can connect with Trump. I checked them out because a lot of times people pass these things along and they're incorrect, but I actually looked them up myself. So if you want to call the comment line, which you should call Monday through Friday, and I think it's 8 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. So that gives you a lot of time because we get up 2 or 3 hours later out here. So you can call the Trump comment line, the White House comment line, and leave a message at 202-456-1111. I'll repeat it, 202-456-1111. Or what I did, I called that line to check the number out, but it's on the weekend, so they're not answering that in that fashion. So they say do it Monday through Friday. But the way that they really like to get contact, they say, is by email. It's very easy. I've done it numbers of times at this point. And you just go on a website. It's White House, all one word, whitehouse.gov / and the word contact. Whitehouse, one word, .gov / contact. When you get there, it just gives you some blanks to fill in of your name, your address, and your email. And then it gives you a box to type in what you want to say, and then you send it. Also, you put in your phone number, and then you send it. Very simple. Takes you a minute or two. You can also go to a spot where, but I'll give you the address, where if you want to actually write something. But if you write something, they ask you to do it in this fashion just so it's easy to handle for them. So it says if you write a letter, please consider typing it on an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper, normal size paper. And typing makes sense since a lot of people's penmanship, if you can't read what you wrote, it doesn't do much good for the receiver. So type it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And if you handwrite your letter, please consider using pen and writing as neatly as possible, maybe printing if you don't have a computer or a typewriter. Right? Not many people have typewriters anymore. Please include your return address on your letter as well as your envelope, because the envelope and the letter may get separated, so a return address on both is important. If you have an email address, please consider including that as well. It's just so much easier today. Now, I know some people don't have the finances for a computer, so but if you do it the way they're asking, which is not hard, you can write something. And be sure they say to put the full address. Some people think, oh, if they just put White House in Washington, D.C., it's going to be fine. But it slows the Postal Service down. So if you just address it, the White House, this is on your envelope, the White House, 1600 or 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, NW, N like in North, W like in West, Washington, D.C., 20500, 20500. So that will get you going. So my recommendation is if you were a voter for Trump and you want to see them drain the swamp, people can get worn down and they still do their job, but they haven't got the fire in their belly that they started with. And listen, many of you might have thought that if you just voted for Trump, who is the anti-political politician, and you got him in, that may have been your duty of the decade. That isn't. All we did is whack the bear right in the nose. And if you want to drain the swamp, I'm telling you, the swamp's got some funky tacos in it that are going to be fighting back. And that's what's going on. And it includes leakers that are so-called Republican. I'm done with being a Republican. So if you think they're so hot, there's people that are in the White House, and I don't know why they don't purge them and just throw them out on their ear. I just open the front door and flush them out. But there's people in the White House that are leaking things daily to the opposition. And then you have congressmen and senators that are actually working against Trump. Listen, these people, one of the most interesting things about the Trump election has been it exposed the evil and corrupt nature of the political system in the United States, regardless of the party. Most of these people, including Mr. Ryan and McConnell on the Republican side, they are full of themselves and are interested in themselves. That's that's what it's all about. I played McConnell's clip over and over again. We're gonna tear Obamacare out, root and branch. You heard anything about that lately? They aren't getting anything done. They aren't passing any legislation. There's no tax cuts coming through. Basically, it's same old, same old. The only person that's really doing anything back there that's rocking the world, from cutting egregious regulations on coal miners and farmers and cattle ranchers and all these attacks on the Bundy family and the Hammond family and the EPA stopping grazing rights, on and on and on. People, the EPA regulating a pond in your back 40. All this baloney. It's Trump to the left, Trump to the right. Stand up, sit down, fight, fight, fight. The rest of them, if a Al Qaeda missile hit the rest of them, we wouldn't miss them next week. We'd give them a good burial, give the sign of the cross over them, and move on, because you wouldn't miss the knowledge. You wouldn't miss Jack Diddley about the rest, because they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything to drain the swamp. They like the swamp. They like the smell of the swamp. They like to swim in it. They like the taste of the swamp. The swamp is their living. And so don't be thinking and hoping for these Republicans to do jack. So it's going to be interesting at what they call the midterm elections, when all these liberals, all the media is predicting a big turnaround against Trump. This is the time to vote your Republican against your Republican ne'er-do-well, and vote in somebody that's going to kick some rear and be a Trumpite. So I'm hoping that in the primaries at the midterm election, we'll see some Republicans that have basically shown their true colors as Democrats and liberals, hopefully get sent back to maybe the plumbing business or wherever they started. So please write or call. I sent an email last night. I sent other emails before and told them I was praying for them and to kick rear back there and drain the damn swamp. I'm sick of the thing. Just drain it. Just go ahead and drain it and let all hell break loose. Now, the other thing I want to tell you is, in 1987, I discontinued watching television. I'm not against. I watch it when I'm in a place where it is. Like if I'm in an airport and I'm waiting for a plane, I might sit in a bar and watch something. Or if I'm at juvenile hall or somewhere where they're watching the television, I might watch something. The crazy thing today is you have what you're seeing on the news is total propaganda from the left. And it's 100% false. And you can't watch it without it having a negative effect on it and rocking your world and rocking your confidence in what the mission is. And the mission is to drain the swamp. That swamp is in your county and in your city and in your state and in the federal government. Now, you can't just say, rah, 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 go Donald Trump, drain the swamp. Because we got a swamp to drain right here. And if you watch the media, they'll give you the impression, well, it's not that bad. And really, this guy, Trump is this and Trump is that. As you've seen for months now, since the inauguration, they've been talking about Russia and about this. And it's all it's baloney. But if you watch it every day, there's a tendency to think, we're getting our rears kicked all over the place, and maybe we should just give up. What I'm telling you to do is just turn it off. Just turn it off. Get your information. You can go on the White House site and get messages right from the White House, from Trump himself. You don't need to wait for the media to give it to you. The reason Trump won the election was because he didn't use the media to convey his message or hope that they would carry his talks around the country, that he would get good coverage. He just tweeted it out. He just went directly to the people. He went on Facebook. He put out clips, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3, 4, 5 minute clips, and got them out on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and just various ways they put the word out and skipped the media. And so the media right now, in fact, I just saw a clip on Facebook of George Bush being interviewed by Matt Lauer, and Matt Lauer was whining about Trump, and I think it was probably an interview a while back after the election. But I appreciated George Bush, who hasn't been an encouragement to me since the election, but I appreciated what George said. Basically, he said, well, Matt, the guy's only been president 30 days. And he says he wants to unify the country. We'll see. Why don't we give him a chance since we're giving him 4 years? And he said the difference between now and when I was a president, Matt, was the media doesn't matter as much as it used to because it's all broken up. And kind of put Matt in his place. And the media doesn't matter. That's why they're trying to reestablish their power. They want to be the power brokers to determine who gets elected and who's not, that they make or break candidates. And they hate the fact that 100% of them missed the boat on this election. They did their very best to promote a criminal to be president. In fact, they helped Hillary basically steal the primary election away from Bernie Sanders. And then they tried to steal the election for Hillary. And then they would take credit for putting her in office. But everybody lost because enough of you, although not all of you, that are even conservative, enough of you went out and voted for Donald Trump. So I'm telling you today that the fight has just begun. And this fight is going to go on as long as Trump is president, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, who knows? But I'm telling you, you better get some wood on the ball, because after it's over, you're going to have some regrets if you just think, oh, I wish I would have helped a little bit along the way. Now we have, if you think it's bad in Washington, D.C., the worst spot next to Washington, D.C. is California. In fact, some used to say if you want to see what Obama, where he wants to take the United States, it's where California is. And we got a lot of work to do here, and it ain't going to work through the Republican Party. I'm telling you, it's not going to work through them, because they are totally confused, and they don't possess any Spaldings, the Republicans. They're very effeminate folks. So, all right. Chief next door is telling me we got a couple minutes left. Hey, I want to mention, I got this thing in the mail from Terry Hansen. She's the Yuba County Clerk Recorder, and I like her. She sent a card to me, and probably to all the voters, saying Yuba County elections will no longer mail each voter sample ballot booklet, both in English and Spanish, in order to reduce the cost and confusion regarding multiple languages. That must be a new law in the state, and I say hallelujah to you, because if you can't figure it out in English, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. In fact, I don't know what people are doing up here voting if they can't learn enough English to pull that off. So I read this through because I thought, do I need to do something? It said, no, if you just want it in English, don't do anything. It says if you wish to receive your sample ballot booklet, that's that booklet where it's a big, thick booklet that tells all about the issues. If you want it in Spanish, you got to complete and return this prepaid card. I think that's wrong in itself. I don't think we should be printing anything in any other languages. We ought to just be doing English. But they say the paper ballots, when you actually go in the booth or you get the absentee ballot in paper, it will still be in English and Spanish. I think that's ridiculous. I'll tell you, if you go to Mexico, you can't even be a citizen down there, but they're not going to be printing any ballots in English down there. So we're going to be right back. We're going to take a little break, and we're coming back for 2.5 more hours. Get a sandwich or something.
Have you ever thought about what you would do to survive the zombie apocalypse? I think one of the reasons that The Walking Dead is such a compelling show is its exploration of the dehumanizing effect that the end of the world has on the characters. Luckily, it's all fiction, right? Tragically, not really. In Mao's brutal experiment in socialism in China, so many millions of people starved that entire villages were wiped out. It was the end of the world. Government records smuggled out of that country document thousands of cases of cannibalism. People were willing to do anything to survive. People were so desperate for food, they began preying on the weak. They would dig up fresh graves. Parents would trade their children to other parents so that they would not have to eat their own. Later, during Mao's Cultural Revolution, cannibalism was used to control people. The Los Angeles Times tells the story of a Red Guard soldier disemboweling one young man who was deemed an enemy to the socialist cause. His heart and his liver were pulled from his corpse, and the villagers fed on it. Because the boy was an enemy of Mao's regime, he had to be eaten. It was a symbol of loyalty to the Socialist Party. Can we learn from history? When things get desperate enough, socialism turns humans into zombies. Socialism kills.
If you're spending $20,000 or $40,000 sending your kid down to these universities, you may think twice about which one you're sending yours to, because most of them are telling your kids that socialism's where it's at, communism where it's at. It's interesting that all these professors that are getting $100,000 to $200,000 a year, some I just noticed were retiring from the UC system at $300,000 a year. Do you know they didn't make that by being in a communist government, by being in a socialist government? Oh, they just are like touting all this socialist crap. I think, we ought to just ship some of those and challenge some of those professors. The problem is these youngsters that are in those classes don't have enough knowledge to come up against the professors. Only a couple of them would. Most of them are just starting out and trying to figure out what life's all about. Would you love to have the knowledge of 40 or 50 years kicking around the planet and go back into college as a youngster and hose them down? I'd like to challenge some of those guys that move down to Venezuela and see if they could pull it up on the stick and feed all those people. I talked, I think, last week or the week before, if Americans are generally obese. But I was going to suggest they go on the Maduro diet. That's President Maduro. If the average Venezuelan has lost 19 pounds since he took office. Now hold that thought. It looks like Biafra down there. For those that have been around a while, remember the Biafra famine in Africa? Some of the nonsense in this country is like, it just drives me nuts. We played that song Happy. One happy guy in town right now in Yuba County, not too far from where we're broadcasting out here on Mount Huth, is a guy named Kevin DeHoff. And Kevin, a number of years ago, took over a business out in Linda called The Country Florist. It's out of North Beale Road, right up next to the street there. You can't miss it. And the Country Florist had been started and it was operated by a family called the Ludwigs. And for many years, and then when they decided to retire, Kevin took it over. Kevin is a very generous guy, and I came into contact with Kevin through the trauma intervention program when one of my friends, I call her, the Bible says, beware lest you entertain angels unaware. So one angel that was sent my way a few years ago was a lady named Diane Metcalf that showed up in our tip training, and then she's been helping me ever since. Not only she was a tip volunteer for a number of years, but she doesn't live in the city right now, but she lives just a ways out, but still helps with raise money for tip, etc. So anyway, she went and talked to Kevin DeHoff at the Country Florist and asked him if he would help us at various events we did, like we do a volunteer appreciation, and he'd provide a flower or a rose for each of the volunteers, or when we did the tip banquets each year. We've done it for 13 years. Kevin would provide the display on Eat the Table centerpiece, I think you call it. Kevin's been a very generous guy, and actually last year he attended our banquet, and it was great to see him there. So if there's a lot of florists in the area, obviously, but if you want to, if you've ever been helped by tip, for instance, like we've done over 10,000 responses since 1994, if you've ever benefited from tip and you want to say thank you, maybe you could do some business with Kevin DeHoff out at Country Florist. And when you do that, say, I heard Lou talk about you on the radio, and we benefited from trauma intervention. We heard you support them, so we want to buy some flowers from you. So Kevin DeHoff, we're proud of you. What he got recently was Yuba County has I think it's called their Economic Development Committee or Council, EDC, and they have a luncheon each year, and they award some plaques or something. They give some awards to businesses that have done an exemplary job, and so they gave an award to the Country Florist for its longevity in serving the Yuba County area. So they actually serve Yuba and Sutter counties, but they're located on the North Beale Road in Yuba County. So give them a shout out. The Country Florist has been there since 1966. Whoa, a long time. I was alive back then. So way to go, and that's a happy thing for Kevin DeHoff. Way to go, Kevin. We're proud of you. Well, as I mentioned just before the break, really quickly, I got this card in the mail saying, if you don't respond that you want a sample ballot, that's the thick thing that's about 100 pages long, right? Man, I've always wondered how much it costs to print all those. But if you want one in Spanish, you better ask for one, or they're not going to give you one. But the ballot you vote on will be showing up in English and Spanish, and that's bums me out. Now, you remember the whole time the Obamas ran the White House, and Eric Holder ran, and Loretta Lynch ran the Attorney General's office. They fought every way they could to stop voter identification. In other words, they wanted you to be as loosey-goosey as possible. In other words, if a dog walked in and claimed he was Lou Benninger, he could get the vote. If he just waved his paw up in the air, then they said, "Oh, are you Lou?" Then he would get the vote. In other words, you could just have got in from Haiti or the Dominican Republic on a boat, on a raft the day before down there in Florida, and you could just walk in and vote. And they objected to the fact that even though you got to show your license and ID to cash a check, or you got to, almost anywhere you go, you got to pull out ID to vote. One of the most important things you'll do in the country, you don't have to show anything. And they thought it was discriminatory and racist because poor black people are so stupid. They cannot figure out how to get an ID, or they're so poor because of slavery, which just ended last month. The Emancipation Proclamation, it just ended. It just happened last month. So the blacks are so poor that they cannot get an ID or figure out how to get an ID. It's just a terrible thing. So it's the very fact that you're going to request an ID to prove that the person is who they say they are is racist. So some states have gone ahead and required an ID, and then the Republican folks, and particularly Donald Trump, and remember the media just continues to attack him when he said there's a lot of voter fraud. So there's now a commission going to go out and look at voter fraud issues. So there's an article that says voter fraud warning. Over 7 million voters registered to vote in more than one state. Now that's what I call voter fraud. Now we had an incident of voter fraud here probably 20 years ago. It was in a city council race. And one of the guys, two guys, one guy was running for city council and the other guy was his campaign manager, and they used a pool hall in town in Marysville to register people to vote. And anyway, somehow, I can't remember the details any more than that, but it looked odd, and the county clerk noticed that there was all these people registering at the same address, and so they ended up prosecuting them for voter fraud. So it happens, and a new study has found that over 7 million American voters are illegally registered to vote in more than one state, and it says it doesn't even include the number of counties that have more voters registered than they have voting age population. Now, that's a bad sign when you know, according to the census, how many people you have in your county, 18 or over, and you got more registered voters than that. Now, that's a red flag. I know some of you are a little slow on that, but that's a red flag. So the study found 7.2 million Americans are registered and can vote more than one in more than one location at a time. The data was gathered from a Kansas-run interstate voter registration cross-check program. Now, that's what I think ought to be available with all the technology, amazing technology we have. And this Kansas-run who it's run by should be of interest to conservatives, but I'll tell you that in a second. It's a Kansas-run interstate voter registration cross-check program which is used to identify possible duplicate registrations among states. So it was conducted by the Office of Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach. Kobach. Some people say Kobach. But Chris was actually on the list, a short list, to be appointed to Attorney General of the United States by President Trump, they chose Jeff Sessions instead. But Chris Kobach is a sharp guy. He is now preparing, Chris Kobach, to head up President Trump's voter fraud commission. There's a commission that's going to look into this, whether it's whoever's defrauding the government, whether they're conservatives or Republicans or something else. Fraud is, in other words, breaking the law is breaking the law. The newest data is from cross-checks of voter registrations across 28 states that participate in this program. I'm sure California refuses to participate. And among those 28 states, that's where they found 7.2 million registrations appeared in 2 states at once. Georgia had 660,708, North Carolina 561,811, Illinois 542,065. They led the 28 states studied in potential duplications. Nearly 68,000 registered voters had invalid dates of birth or missing, incomplete dates of birth. The program also discovered 32,000 registered voters who appeared to have invalid Social Security numbers tied to their voter records, which can result either from clerical mistakes or just flat-out fraud. So, pretty interesting stuff. There's also other organizations that have been launched to fight voter fraud. For instance, Washington watchdog group Judicial Watch recently launched an effort to force 11 states to clean up their out-of-date voting rolls and to eliminate millions of registrations that are defunct or fraudulent. Earlier this year, it was estimated up to 800,000 illegal votes were cast for Hillary Clinton. So there was all kinds of debate over that, like, where's your evidence, where's your evidence, where's your evidence, Mr. Trump, when he brought that up. He just didn't dream that up. He was told that by people that look at these things. Now, what I'm hoping to do here, maybe I'll get to it this week, is talk to Donna Johnston in Sutter County, who's the clerk over there, and Terry Hansen in Yuba County, who's the clerk over there, and say, how often or how do you go about, say I drop dead tomorrow. Now, maybe they would know if I drop dead, but if the average person drops dead, how do you purge them off your records? Or can somebody vote by getting my absentee ballot, which goes out automatically in my name every time there's an election? Because I've voted absentee for many, 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 many years. I can't even remember the last time I voted at the booth. So how do you purge and how do you confirm people's, first of all, how do you purge people that shouldn't be voting? Maybe they're dead, or they moved from Sutter and Yuba County and they're voting in both spots. And then how do you prove, like if I walked into a voting booth, a voting place, how do you prove I'm who I am? Do they look at my license? Or could I go in and vote for somebody that I notice that maybe I notice an obituary in the paper, and then the election's coming up here in a few months, and I go in and vote for myself, and then I go back in later and vote for that dude, right? And vote for 3 or 4 other people. How do you sort that out? I think that'll be an interesting topic. So, let me just, do the public schools constantly blow your mind? Now, this Monday, the public schools are going to honor the pedophile, Harvey Milk. Now, Harvey, according to the book, Harvey was no closet homosexual. Harvey loved the homosexual cause. He loved being a homosexual. At least it seemed like he did. He was a professed liar. He lied about getting thrown out of the Navy. He wasn't. He was honorably discharged. He lied about his camera store being vandalized during a supervisor's campaign he was involved in. It wasn't. He had it vandalized himself, so people feel sorry for him. He, according to, I think it's Randy Schultz, I think that's the name of the author, in The Mayor of Castro Street. Randy was, or maybe still is, a reporter for the Chronicle or the Examiner down in San Francisco. He wrote the biography on Melt and says that Melt preferred young boys, wayward young boys that were kind of lost in life, and he would help them not be lost and help them find him to have sex with. That was he really liked that. Most homosexual men like a good young guy. And so that was Melk. And so now we honor him because we have a bunch of perverts running the state of California right now. Either they're sexual perverts or communists or La Raza people like Becerra, the attorney general. La Raza means the cause, right? The race, the cause, the race. And, the race, just like Aryan Brotherhood thinks the white folks are the race. The Mexicans think, yeah, we're the race, the La Raza. And so we got all these people that are twisted folks running this state. And so they are forcing your kids in the public school system to honor a pedophile. And so Randy Thomason, who runs Save California, you can check it out at savecalifornia.com. Randy has been encouraging people to boycott and take your kids to have a fun day with the family, take them fishing, go do some educational thing, take them to some sort of an outing, maybe the Empire Mine up in Grass Valley for you in Yuba County, or go up there and do some really cool stuff. Maybe go up to Donner Lake or Lake Tahoe and show them around and take them through the Donner Party Museum up there. Do something educational and fun and take a swim instead of going and spending the day, Harvey Milk Day in our public schools on the 22nd. Now, here's the other thing that just totally blows my mind. You think that teachers are smart people because they're actually supposed to be teaching your kids something. And then you think, well, then if a person's made a principal of a school, they're even smarter because they not only taught, but now they know all the rules and they oversee all the teachers and they oversee all the kids, so they should even be smarter. But it's just, I don't know whether there's a flat spot on the occasional principal's head, but all of a sudden they'll say, a kid will show up at school and he'll have a Bible. And they'll say, oh, you can't have a Bible here. This is like a Bible-free zone. This is like a Jesus-free zone. Or if they wear a T-shirt like says, I love Jesus, or Jesus is the way. Or they have a Second Amendment T-shirt about guns. Like maybe the guy is Hallelujah for the NRA. All of a sudden, you can't wear any old T-shirt. And that's censored. So recently, it's just on and on. Or kids want to have, there's all kinds of clubs on a high school campus. But then all of a sudden, these Christian kids want to have a club. And they find a, what do they call it, a mentor, or they have to supervisor. They have a teacher to oversee the club, advocate or something, and they have one, but they won't allow them because the club is too controversial, or they say it's too political. If it's a Christian club, if it's a non-Christian club, an atheist club, well, that's fine. Or if it's a Satanist club, or if it's a Muslim club, that's okay. So it's just amazing to me how teachers who you think would know the Bill of Rights and people's civil rights of all things, and that you can't be racist and you can't be taking away people's right to assemble just because they're on a campus. So here, true to form, every year it happens. Every few months you get one of these. A high school in Allentown, Pennsylvania. These young kids, Elizabeth Castro and a senior, high school senior, and junior Grace Shire, they applied to have a pro-life club at Parkland High School using the standard process. And it's called a faculty advisor. I couldn't come up with that name. So they got their faculty advisor. But then the faculty advisor, when they looked, the advisor lost. when he started out, he had Spaulding's, but then all of a sudden he was missing them. And I'm going to tell about a situation where somebody removed somebody else's Spaulding's here in a minute. But this guy all of a sudden resigned, and he started to have a voice like Jay Carney or Josh Ernst. You remember those guys were the speakers for the public information guys for Obama? I think both of them are married, but I don't know whether the wife's like getting served well through those guys. They seem a little wimpy to me. But anyway, the advisor resigned before they even got started, but the students found another advisor and submitted their application, but they were verbally denied by the assistant principal, who claimed the pro-life group was just too controversial. I mean, wanting a baby to be conceived and grow and be born, that's over the top. It's just like too radical and controversial. You don't want kids getting involved in that stuff that's too gnarly. So Castro Elizabeth, subsequently, she sent an email to the assistant principal noting that other groups, such as the Gay Straight Alliance, just a normal, boring group, they're on campus, and the Multicultural Leadership Club, well, they're on campus, and the Political Science Club, they're on campus, and a really radical group, the Fashion Club, they're also on campus. But she got no response back. Don't you hate it when you email somebody and they don't respond to you? Just want to reach over there and break their nose. So she says, Elizabeth Castro says, we met all the requirements to start a club, and we were denied simply because we were pro-life. And so Castro says the purpose of the club is to create life-affirming culture at our school. Now that's just bad right there, because, the unspoken religion of secular America is abortion, and the right to abortion, and to worship at the abortion altar. So Castro says the purpose of the club is to create a life-affirming culture at our school. In other words, to encourage people to let a baby be born. Oh no, we can't do that. That's going to confuse kids, because we're teaching them that if you have testicles, that you might actually be a woman, even though you got the plumbing for a man. So and like if you get pregnant, if that pregnancy is like today, if you call, it may be an inconvenient time for you to call, so I'm going to abort your call. So it's the same way with kids. They don't want to, like, if a kid gets pregnant, a junior in high school, we want to give her the blessing to abort that kid, and we don't want anybody like confusing the issue, like saying, oh, maybe we ought to let it live or something. So Elizabeth says, we want to educate our peers on the issue of life. We want to hold diaper drives to support pregnant and parenting students, and become a voice for those who cannot speak for themselves. And in that case, for those out in Lynn and Olivers, that would be the babies who actually you can't hear them outside the womb yet. You can see them in there with sonograms, etc. So anyway, they have recruited the Thomas More Society, which is a legal group, to grab James E. Moniz, the second assistant, the principal, James E. Moniz II. Man, these guys are getting uppity. And assistant principal, Jude Sant. And superintendent, Richard T. Snisak. I'd change my name if I had that name, Snisak. But anyway, these people don't like to respond to emails, but Thomas More Society is going to grab them by the short hairs. And I hope that they don't not only get their club, but they get a couple of those people fired. Now, you would think that principals would follow the rules, but the problem is, just like the Republicans and Democrats, they really aren't what you thought they were. They really aren't what you thought they were. They're hypocrites, they're liars, they're cheats, they're perverts, and all they want is a fat old salary, and they want people to pat them on the back and call, oh my God, Assemblyman Gallagher is at the meeting tonight. Oh my God, would he hold my baby? Would he shake my hand? Or Senator Nielsen, oh, Senator Nielsen, do you know he might come? Honestly, I'd rather have a homeless dude come to my party than Senator Nielsen or James Gallagher. Are you kidding me? So anyway, they're going to try to hose this school down, and I I am so thrilled. I remember when I started, we need to switch, we need to go. Okay, the chief says we need to take a break. So this is, we'll be back for 2 more hours. Don't go away unless you're totally bored. All right. There's a thing here on my desk that says, I'm supposed to say this, says you're listening to 1410 AM, The Patriot, no longer called KMYC Radio. So I don't know. There you go. What are you going to say? 1410 AM? What? Oh, straighten my mic up. Is it better now? Is it better now? Okay. All right. He's a little technical adjustment. You can also listen to 104.3 FM if you hate AM. I don't know whether you do or not. Problems, as a listener, you have to be responsible. I'm responsible on my end because we have a condom over the mic here today, and that's to protect you from any unsavory items popping out of my mouth. So I saw this cool thing. Did you know that most kids today don't even know what LSD is? Some of them do. But did you know that it was illegal in the 60s, in the early 60s? Lysergic acid dithylamide. You with me? Lysergic acid dithylamide. And the reason I'm bringing it up is one of the big pushers, creators, chemists that created it was a guy named Nicholas Sand. And he was in California recently for an Oakland conference called the Psychedelic Science Conference. And he commented afterwards that it was like the best weekend of his life. And he went home and he died in his sleep. He was in his 70s. Now, it's kind of interesting, the history of this LSD, because you would think that the 60s were crazy enough. But if you didn't think it was crazy enough, you could take this tablet, or you could take it came in a tablet form, a salt tablet, or you could just get a piece of like cellophane that it would have a drop of it on it, and you could put it in your mouth and suck on it, and you were off and going. So it was created by Swiss scientist Albert Hofmann. They think he may have been the first guy to come up with it. And then Timothy Leary, who at that time was a professor at Harvard University, he's known for promoting it. But it was a self-taught. Now hold on to the self-taught aspect. This guy's pretty bright. Self-taught chemist named Nicholas Sand, who was a wizard, kind of like the Wizard of Oz, behind LSD, and launched and created tens of millions of acid trips across multiple generations, and maybe the highest quality acid ever produced. So his history is kind of interesting, actually. He had an associate, Tim Scully, that both of them created what they called Orange Sunshine LSD. So when you get acid, it'd have a name to it. Now, how they would tweak it to make it different, I don't know. I took it a few times. If you notice I stumble every once in a while, I'm just attributing it to my acid days and damage to my brain. But Orange Sunshine first hit the streets of San Francisco in 1967. And so it's interesting. Nicholas Sand, it's interesting who his parents were. Born in Brooklyn in May 10, 1941, Sand was the son of prominent chemist Clarence Hiskey. Who was Clarence Hiskey? That probably wasn't taught to you there in school. I didn't learn about him. He was a top secret Manhattan Project scientist, chemist, that worked on the development of the atomic bomb. But the authorities realized that Clarence was spying for the Soviet Union. So after they hosed Clarence down, it doesn't really say whether they executed him or put him in prison or whatever they did, but Marcia, the wife of Clarence, divorced him and took their son, Nicholas, and changed his name to her maiden name, to Sand. And Nicholas went on to earn an anthropology and sociology degree from Brooklyn College in 1966, but by then he had already begun to kind of stray from the way. And during his college years, when LSD was completely legal, and he began to try it. And he always liked to practice yoga, but that's different than the yoga they do nowadays. It had a little bit more zip to it. But he sat naked in the lotus position. There's something about being naked back then. I tried it myself some. And naked and loaded. There was just something unique about it. But he was sitting naked in a lotus position in front of a fire at a farmhouse, a campfire, when he took his first hit of LSD and he was coming onto it, and he said he felt like he was floating in this immense black space. And he said, "What am I doing here?" He was thinking, "What am I doing here?" He was getting higher than a kite, as they say. And suddenly he heard a voice. It came through his body, and it said, "Your job on this planet is to make psychedelics and turn on the world." Now, you know, there's all kinds of missions people get in life. Some people have said some kids are born out of their mother's womb and they got a cigar in their mouth and they said, "I'm going to be a firefighter." And they know from the womb what exactly they're going to be. They start talking about it, or they come out with a basketball in their hand or a baseball. And from that time on, all the way up through their forming years, developmental years, they're going to be in the NBA or the Major League Baseball, and they become that. Isn't that amazing? Other people like me, we're still trying to figure out where we're going to end up in life. But his mission in life came to him on an acid trip, naked, sitting in front of a campfire out at this farmhouse. And he says, "Your job on this planet is to make psychedelics and turn on the world." And he thought, if we could turn on everyone in the world, then maybe we'd have a new world of peace and love. Now, oddly enough, I had the same kind of thought. Now, I didn't have the amazing epiphany experience that he did, but I kind of thought, if everybody was loaded all the time, then wouldn't the world be a nice place? But of course, when you're young like that, you forget that somebody may have to operate on a heart patient or cancer patient, and they can't be loaded on acid when they do that. So no, there has to be some way we keep the world running while all the rest of us sit around campfires out of our mind. So anyway, Sand had been invited to the farmhouse by former Harvard University professor Richard Alpert, who was also an acid head. Alpert, now these are the prestigious colleges where you're paying $40,000 a year to send your kid. Alpert, who was an acid head, he became known as psychedelic guru Baba Ram Dass. Maybe you heard that name before. You could probably Google it and read about it. Baba Ram Dass. And Alpert had a colleague by the name, I mentioned him earlier, Timothy Leary. And they formed the League for Spiritual Discovery, coincidentally stands for LSD, League for Spiritual Discovery. And so a year later, Sand's reputation as a drug chemist had spread to San Francisco, where another self-taught, now this is pretty cool, huh? These people taught themselves chemistry. Now that's a scary thought. Many of us were taking LSD made by these guys, and they were self-taught, right? Guy named Owsley Stanley was making millions of doses in the Bay Area of LSD. Stanley introduced Sand to another self-taught chemist. These self-taught chemists, you see this? Tim Scully. And they started making orange sunshine LSD, or lysergic acid dithalamide. So you over there in Juvenile Hall, the Cannabis Club, I'm going to give you a shout out today. And it'd probably be better if you passed if somebody offered some LSD. It may have some long-term impacts in your life. So Sand was sentenced to prison because the legislature in California made it illegal, and they started enforcing the law, and they caught him. But when he was on bail, he fled to Canada, and for 20 years, he was cranking out LSD up there in Canada and delivering it all over the place. He gave it to the soldiers in Vietnam in an effort to stop the war. He thought, listen, if I can get all the soldiers in Vietnam under the influence of LSD, the war will come to a screeching halt. And then he got it into jail inmates. Now, I don't know whether I'd want to be on LSD locked up in a room. Now, that would be a bit freaky from my experience with the few times I used it. And then he even took them to India after becoming a follower of the Indian guru Sri Rajneesh. So when authorities finally raided his lab in 1996, he boasted that they seized enough doses to turn on every citizen in the nation of Canada. That's Nicholas Sand. His mission in life was to get everybody high. And old Lou, for a brief time, thought maybe I might be a part of that mission, but I got delivered from that. Thank you, Jesus. So that's just a thought. All right, I want to come back to the local area a little bit and talk about local politics. Oh yeah, thank God we got somebody with the hands on the wheel here. I had Yuba County Health Department helps me out a lot in the Yuba County Jail because we do all kinds of classes for inmates. In fact, I don't know if I mentioned last week, we graduated 5 females with high school diplomas here a couple weeks ago. So we do other classes as well on health and all kinds of stuff, supernatural and health and jobs and anger management and stuff. And so we've had the health department talk, and the health department generally very negative on e-cigarettes. And I thought, the people tell me, drug addicts that I know that are my friends tell me that cigarettes are harder to kick than heroin. So I've never done heroin and I've never done cigarettes. So I don't really I just take them at their word, but people say cigarettes are really hard to kick. Everyone in my family smokes cigarettes. And so eventually most of them quit, but sometimes it was too late and they died of cancer. But anyway, the health department's really down on e-cigarettes, even as a way to quit. So I want to play you a clip by the Prager Institute about e-cigarettes. I think that will give you a little different perspective on it than what you're hearing in the media.
Imagine if there were an alternative to smoking cigarettes. Imagine this alternative could help millions of people quit smoking and came with only a fraction of the harmful chemicals that cigarettes do. Well, you don't have to imagine it. It exists. E-cigarettes are the most innovative and promising smoking cessation product yet invented. So public health officials and anti-tobacco activists are all in favor of this life-saving innovation, right? Actually, they're almost all totally against it. Why? Because incredibly, they make no substantial distinction between e-cigarettes and real cigarettes, even though they are completely different products. To begin with, e-cigarettes aren't cigarettes. They contain no tobacco. Instead, a liquid containing nicotine derived from tobacco leaves is vaporized, and users of e-cigarettes inhale that vapor. Vapor, mind you, not smoke. This is significant because the real harm from tobacco comes from the combustion process, which releases hundreds of toxic compounds known as tar. Since e-cigarettes have no tobacco and no combustion, they release no tar. This makes them, according to Britain's Department of Health, at least 95% less harmful than tobacco cigarettes. E-cigarettes do contain nicotine, an addictive drug. However, there's little evidence that nicotine alone is bad for you, making it similar to, say, caffeine, a drug used every day by millions of people. Brad Rodew, an oral cancer specialist at the University of Louisville, put it this way: I love coffee, and I'm sure I could get caffeine if I smoked my coffee beans. But I would be paying a much different price in overall health if I did. In other words, when it comes to addictive substances like caffeine or nicotine, it isn't the addictive substance that's harmful, it's how it's delivered. As South African psychiatrist Mike Russell said about cigarettes, people smoke for the nicotine, but they die from the tar. And again, there's no tar in e-cigarettes. Does this all mean that e-cigarettes are completely safe? Of course not. Nothing is completely safe. E-cigarettes are a relatively new innovation, so more research is needed, especially on long-term effects. There's also a place for sensible regulation to ensure consumer safety. But unlike normal everyday products, any potential risk posed by e-cigarettes is far outweighed by a real, not potential, good. Saving lives by providing the nicotine that smokers enjoy without delivering the deadly toxins that can kill them. Many former smokers have successfully used e-cigarettes to help them kick their nicotine addiction altogether. A recent study in an Oxford Journal peer-reviewed publication, Nicotine and Tobacco Research, said that e-cigarettes could reduce smoking-related deaths by 21%. That's thousands of lives every year. John Britton, an epidemiologist and director of the University of Nottingham's Center for Tobacco and Alcohol Studies, is even more optimistic. E-cigarettes are the first genuinely new way of helping people stop smoking that has come along in decades. They have the potential to help half or more of all smokers get off cigarettes. So again, you'd think public health officials and anti-tobacco groups would be doing everything they could to encourage smokers to switch to e-cigarettes. Instead, they push for laws and rules that equate the two products. Cigarettes are bad, so e-cigarettes must also be bad. As of August 2016, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has ruled that all e-cigarettes must go through a long and expensive application process. This process could end up costing as much as $1 million per new product. While some of the biggest manufacturers will be able to shoulder the costs and navigate the regulatory mess, most small e-cigarette companies will be forced out of business. With less competition, e-cigarettes will become more expensive, and many people will go right back to smoking. E-cigarette prohibitionists may think they're using a better safe than sorry approach to save consumers from some yet-to-be-discovered danger, but they're not. They're actually endangering millions of smokers who would make the switch if the e-cigarette market were allowed to flourish. As Joe Nocera, a New York Times columnist, wrote, equating smoking cigarettes with inhaling e-cigarettes is a huge disservice to public health. On the scale of potential harms, e-cigarettes aren't even in the same ballpark as combustible cigarettes. They have the potential to save millions of lives. The government needs to develop a new paradigm for dealing with e-cigarettes, one that ensures basic standards but recognizes their relative safety and immense benefit to public health. If they don't, more people will die. Imagine that. I'm Caroline Kitchens of the R Street Institute for Prager University.
Now, I bet that if e-cigarettes were only available prescribed by a pharmacy or through your doctor, they would be fine. It's interesting, isn't it? I remember years ago, because when I left the drug scene, I didn't use any, I just began to follow Jesus and walked away from drugs. That doesn't work the same for other people who, like some of my friends have said, well, I wanted to start a clinic with Dr. Cassidy one time to give Suboxone or different products that could help people transition off opioids. You heard, if you listen to the commercials through Fox News, you heard about the opioid epidemic and them suggesting that they have safe places to shoot heroin. And, everybody's coming up with all kinds of ideas about how to save lives, even though people are addicted. So some of my friends had the attitude, hey, people ought to just get off drugs, boom, boom, boom. We either do drugs and then get off and, follow Jesus. But my experience was that some people, it doesn't work exactly that way. So I'd read where Dr. Cassidy was helping people at that time back in the early 90s with methadone. I didn't really understand a lot about methadone, but I called him up and asked him if he had time for lunch. So I'd never met him before. We had lunch, and he explained to me some of the whole how opioids work on receptors in the brain and how people have difficulty getting off once they get on, and how they can wean people off by using methadone or now they use actually another product called Suboxone. So he began to describe to me the fact that, because some people say, naysayers will say, you just trading one drug for another. Well, not exactly, because heroin, which is illegal, and street purchased Norcos or Oxys or any of those types of opiates, when you buy them on the street, that's illegal. And so people then start stealing and endangering their lives and the lives of their families by using street drugs. And so he said, if we get a person stabilized on Suboxone or methadone, then we can at least begin. They're sober. They're not ripping stores off or ripping people off to support their habit. And we can talk to them about how to change their life, how to get unaddicted. And so it's interesting to me to listen to people. I think the health department people's motives are good. They want people to be healthy. But often the road to get there isn't very easy. And so Dr. Cassidy used to explain to some of my friends that I worked with at Glad Tidings, he said, well, when you pray for a person who has diabetes, you don't ask them to get off their medications, do you? Or high blood pressure, or. We take a lot of, if you look, like most people, almost all people in America take medications now. I'm one of the few who don't. And they were shocked when I went in for surgery. They said, are you sure you don't take any medications? And so, but most people take some kind of medications. And why wouldn't we advocate not taking those medications until we get our problem resolved, whether it's diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, whatever. AIDS, HIV, why don't we just not take those medications? And so, anyway, it's an interesting phenomenon, and I think it's a refreshing approach to offer people an option. I know the health department says they're worried about kids starting on e-cigarettes. That'll be a gateway to smoking the real thing. I don't know. You're probably going to always have some kind of outlier events going on in all these situations. We're going to be right back. We're got a little couple commercials, and then we'll carry on.
On one side, the far right, you have fascism and that sort of totalitarianism. It's very nativist, it's very authoritarian, it's very controlling of how we live our lives. On the other side of the spectrum, let's say the left, is socialism. And of course, socialism in the original conception was going to morph into communism. And actually, in the words of Frederick Engel, one of the co-authors of the Communist Manifesto, he promised that the state would wither away under socialism. Notice that on the far left, it feels like the intentions are better. It feels like it's a little naive, but maybe, just maybe, we could get to that place where we would take from everybody according to their ability and give according to need. Well, guess what? It's not fascism versus socialism. An honest political spectrum would lump all of the isms, all of the authoritarian, top-down, big government approaches, murderous approaches, Islamofascism, communism, socialism, Nazism, all really bad stuff, belongs on one side of the spectrum. On the other is liberty and cooperation and freedom and people coming together to solve problems and to do things that we couldn't do together. If you look at the political spectrum that way, it makes a lot more sense.
Being an independent thinking Black American isn't easy. Just ask North Carolina quarterback Cam Newton. Newton caused a backlash on Twitter because he doesn't think his critics are racist. You see, if you are Black, you are expected to follow a set of rules. Rule number 1, a Black American must see racism as the motivation behind every criticism and obstacle in their way. If you dare break that rule, you will face the wrath of the black mob. Rule number 2, a black American must act black. You are expected to hang out with other blacks and do what they do. Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson broke that rule and he was criticized. Rule number 3, a black American must marry black. Cleveland Browns quarterback RG3 broke that rule and he was criticized. Rule number 4, black Americans must vote Democrat. Well, I broke that rule and all the other rules I just mentioned. These quarterbacks are amazing athletes and they have enjoyed the success from America's exceptionalism, just like I have. As role models, I urge these talented men to stay true to their principles and stand up to the politically correct barriers that keep black Americans down.
All right. Lou Benninger here. We're going to plow on. I think, what do we got? We got an hour and a half to go. We're in good shape. I want to talk about some local politics here for a second, and I want to start off with the city of Marysville. I wrote an article that you could read in the Territorial Dispatch. You can go to territorialdispatch.biz, B-I-Z, and you can read it just like you could read the paper, except it's electronic. You can just flip through the pages or scan the pages, ads and all. In fact, if some of you have trouble finding the Dispatch, which is distributed at certain locations in the Yuba-Sutter and Nevada County area, and if you want to eliminate having to go look for it each week, you can have it sent to you, and you can just call the Territorial Dispatch and sign up and pay a fee to have that done. It just, and they'll mail it to the post office, send it right over to the house. So let me, here, you can read this article, but I wanted to refer to this, some points in this article. Mayor Samayoa, Ricky Samayoa, who's been the mayor here into his second term, he has been a part of he isn't the only one, but he's just one in a legacy series of bad city councils. What I mean, they're not necessarily bad people. They just make horrible decisions. And they have taken a very prosperous city, small city or town, 12,000 people, Marysville, and taken it to the brink of bankruptcy and disaster. Businesses flee. Businesses try to avoid it. The city council has made it even more avoidable by raising sales taxes to 8.5%, adding a percent. And so recently, when they did that, they were defeated in one vote, and then the next opportunity, they put it on the ballot again and convinced residents that if they did not pass this 1% increase, that they thought would yield $1 to $1.5 million extra revenue a year for the city, there'd be no way that they could provide proper fire and police services. In other words, they scared the hell out of the citizens. But there was no legal mandate in the measure to make them spend the money for police and fires. They can use it wherever they want. So like this last week, they just gave $15,000 for the homeless. So they can spend it however they want. So Mayor Samayoa just wrote an editorial for the Appeal Democrat on May 14th, said vital parts of Marysville's rebuilding agenda have already begun. It's totally a fraud article, fallacious, does not tell the whole story. You know, when you go into court like I've done, I've testified as well as I've been on a jury, and they always ask you to swear and basically before God to tell the truth, but not just stop there, but the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Because you know, when people have told you about a situation in life, sometimes they'll tell you a truth, a part of what happened, but they don't tell you the whole story. So you get a twisted version, even though what they told you was accurate to the extent. So Mr. Mayor has made it appear like all these new wonderful changes are happening all of a sudden. And I thought, well, how's that happen? We don't have any money. I mean, we have this new revenue stream, but that new revenue stream, although they didn't say this in the bill, in the measure, it was to go to pay off a risky business investment the council made a few years back on some B Street property where we now owe $17 million for a $1.5 million piece of property. Now, only government can pull that off. Only government can pull that off. And so we can't let it go back to the bank because they issued bonds that were against the general fund. So there is no way, unless the entire city went completely bankrupt and could not pay its bills and went before a bankruptcy judge where they could say that they could renegotiate the bonds. But I'll leave that there. So the mayor says that they're going to pave 40 blocks worth of the streets, which are horrible, and they're going to work on the parks. And the question is, where is the money going to come from? Because they're going to go out. It turns out they're going to go out and borrow $4 to $5 million. Now they're going to borrow. We already owe $17 million for a $1.5 million piece of property. That's about 5 acres. They call it lakefront property over on the east side of Ellis Lake, a big strip of barren ground. And so he starts saying, hey, we raised the sales tax rate, so now we're going to pay. It enabled us to hire 3 police officers and 3 firefighters. But he left out the fact that they gave all the department heads of the city, like I said in my article, they gave all the city employees raises. But a lady contacted me that knows what's going on over at the city. She said, Lou, actually not all employees got raises. What they did get is a reinstatement of working on Fridays. So they work on Fridays where they had a furlough Friday where they weren't getting paid for that day. But now they're back working and they're getting paid for that day. That's not a raise. I agree. But at least they work full time. But the middle management and the management of the city all got raises. Now, that wasn't explained to the voters when they voted for this 10-year tax increase of 1%. Now, the mayor wants to borrow $4.5 million. How's he going to pay that back? Because we didn't have money to pay back this almost $650,000 a year for the B Street boondoggle property on the lakefront property that's worth $1.5 million. We didn't have that money. So how's he going to pay back the $4.5 million? Well, he claims that, you remember, most of you, or I don't know about Yuba County and Sutter County. I think we probably voted against it, but most voted for that road tax that Brown just put through, that SB1. And so the city thinks it's going to get some of that SB1 money. And then a lot of you voted for that Measure F, taxing the marijuana dispensaries that the city claims it's going to see happen. They've been okaying 2 marijuana dispensaries. And so Mr. Samio is saying that the money from those dispensaries, the taxes on the dispensary sales, and that 12 cents per gallon increase and about 20 cents increase on diesel, 12 cents on gas, 20 cents on diesel plus DM fee, there's all kinds of, it's $52 billion over 10 years. Their share of that money, that's how we're going to pay back those millions. Well, here's the deal. First of all, none of that money's come in yet. And something could happen at the state level. For instance, right now there's 4 guys that are being recalled, that 1 Republican and 3 Democrats, I believe, that are being recalled. Petitions are being circulated right now, and you can go online and probably figure out how that's happening. And what I would suggest if you live in the North State, to vote or to send money down to those campaigns and see how you can sign up. Actually, the recalls could only be signed up. You can only sign the petition in the area that they're being recalled in their district. But you can donate to the recall effort from wherever in the world you are. So who's to say that this SB1 might get turned back? And who's to say with all the different things shaken down? I just saw where Live Oak City Council voted against dispensaries to block them. Who's to say that Marysville and Yuba County won't even overturn what we have right now with this with this measured on dispensary. So again, it's the city council presuming on the future that things are going to happen in a certain way. You know what the city council said when the property didn't sell that they bought and put floated bonds because they didn't have any money to buy it, the B Street property? When asked why they did that and what their response was for this property being a total failure, they said, well, we really had good intentions. You know, that's why, folks, that the public sector needs to be involved in investments and government needs to stay out of it, because we have lunatics on the city council that have no experience in buying and selling property for investing and developing property and should have just stayed out of it. So Mr. Scamayoa, who's never run a business of his own, and he works for government, that means that you can go and you can sleep all day or do stupid stuff and still be employed. And that's his job. And so he has not had any awards for supernatural interventions in companies or fixing problems in government. He's actually been a part of a total government failure in Marysville. So I wrote about that. And so the mayor is gambling again. Now, the other thing he said is the city, another beautiful thing he's raving about, is the city has agreed to spend $145,000 on improved water quality at Ellis Lake. Let me ask, you got to ask these questions. He doesn't include it in his editorial. If we're broke, where does $145,000 come from? Where are you going to get that from? Because I thought this $1 to $1.5 million was for police and fire and paying back the B Street boondoggle bond. Well, it also comes from loans. But it's interesting to know why, you know, there's been an interest in cleaning up the lake, but there's been no political will to clean up the lake. We've been sending people to the moon, but we can't seem to figure out how to clean up a miserable little lake. But now he raves about going to spend $145,000, like they debated it and debated it, and then they came up with this wonderful idea to clean it up once and for all. No, that's not how it happened. Here's what happened. The state is holding a gun to the head of the city council because Dave Lehman and Walter Munchheimer, it's interesting how nobody in city government and county government will take responsibility when things really get gnarly and bad. It's always somebody else's fault, but nobody really gets held accountable. So when Dave Lehman, the public services director, decided he didn't want to be bothered with Department of Water Resources quarterly reports, and he ignored them for 12 quarters. So in Olivehurst and Linda, that's 3 years. For 3 years, he decided, I'm going to get paid, but I'm not going to do my job. But he got paid anyway, and now he gets a retirement, but he didn't do his job. So finally, one day, the state sent a letter fining the city for $3 million, a broke city. And the city then asked their attorneys that they retained for $10,000 a month to see if they could negotiate a settlement of lesser amount of money. So the $10,000 a month attorneys, they couldn't handle that themselves, so they went out and hired a specialist in negotiation with the state government, and they negotiated a reduction from $3 million to $288,000. And then the state said, we'll even make you a better deal. We'll let you take half that money, or $144,000, and we need to agree on it, but you could pick a project that improves the city, the water quality of the city or something. And if we agree to it, you can take half the money you were going to give us, and we'll walk away with half, and you keep half for improving the city's water quality, because that's what we do, Department of Water Resources. Hallelujah to you. So instead of Mr. Scamayoa telling the truth on how, now again, where's that $288,000? We didn't know we were going to come up with $3 million. Like that sales tax revenue is only $1.5 million or $1 million a year. That's 3 years of that down the tubes. So thank God they negotiated it down to 288. But the mayor talks about that like the city just worked so hard, and with their eminent wisdom, they came up with this idea. Actually, they didn't come up with the idea. the State Department of Water Sources put a gun to their head and said either pay us $288,000 or spend half of it on a water project. Now to the latest thing. You can see in the newspaper right now in the Appeal Democrat, and I have a copy here that somebody gave me Thursday, May 18th. And down at the bottom of the front page says, Council debates and delays recruitment effort. Now, let me tell you a real fiasco. This city and this county of Yuba and this city of Marysville, they waste money. They say, oh, we're broke. We're the poorest, one of the poorest counties, poorest cities in the country or in the state or whatever. And then they turn around and they just give money away. Here, Marysville gives $15,000 to Habitat for Humanity. I mean, how many layers of welfare are we going to have? So anyway, here's what happened the other night. Right now, we have a city manager and we have a finance director, but the finance director hasn't been coming to work. In government, you don't need to come to work to get paid. You can get paid and not come to work. So he hadn't been coming to work, and it turns out either he has a health problem or his family member has a health problem that kept him from actually coming over and working 8 hours for his pay. So finally he resigned. And then we have Dave Lehman had resigned, the community services director, or the public works director, right? And so now we have two people that we need to replace because we have a pinch hitter in there that's doing a good job, but he's only staying for a month or so. He's a retired gentleman. So they had already hired a headhunting firm at $22,000 to find them some applicants for that community service director job, Dave Lehman's old spot. So Stephanie McKenzie, who is the newest city council person and a novice to politics, she's a school teacher, never run for politics before, never been that involved, but she's a sharp gal. So when they realized that the finance director had resigned, she heard they were going to ask to pay another $22,000 to this headhunting firm to find that a filler for that job. She called Robert Bendorf with the county on her way to the city before the city council meeting and asked Robert, is there another way to find credible people to fill these spots other than paying these headhunting firms? And he says, well, absolutely. He said, our human services, our human resources people at the county are really sharp, and we got a lot more employees than you do. We're finding people all the time. We're going out and finding people. And he said, in fact, we're the ones that found your city administrator, Walter Munchheimer. She said, well, how much would that cost? He said, about $2,000. So Stephanie McKenzie went in the city council meeting, and when they brought up paying another $22,000 for this headhunting firm to find another person, she said, well, I just got off the phone with Mr. Bendorf, who's the county administrator, and why don't we consider using the county and just paying $2,000? Now, listen. When you're paying a city administrator $120,000 or $130,000, $140,000 to think really smart thoughts, why does the city council always have to come up with these alternative ideas? Now, it's interesting that when you're talking to Scamayoa, you're talking to Munchheimer, and when you're talking to Munchheimer, you're talking to Scamayoa. So Munchheimer then tries to embarrass her by saying, well, it would have been nice if you would have talked to me first before you brought this up at the city council. Well, the problem is that they were going to vote on it, and she just learned her information because she's new. And she thought, well, why don't we call around and see if we can come up with some better ideas and save the taxpayers some money? Novel thought. I know that doesn't occur to most people in the government, but to Stephanie, it did. So then Scamayoa gets on his intellectual high horse, which is severely flawed, and says, well, you get what you pay for. I love it when people say that. You get what you pay for, right? And it's interesting that we're listening to the bright man on the block, Mr. Walter Munchheimer, who was found spending about $2,000, but then he can't seem to find anybody without spending $22,000 a head. So on it goes with the city of Marysville. Those people can't find their butt with both hands over there. But what they know how to do John Nicoletti, who now is working for Habitat for Humanity after cashing in on the taxpayer for about $80,000 a year, specializing in spewing hot air on this for about 2 or 3 terms, now is hustling money for Habitat, and they turn around and give the homeless people or the Habitat $15,000. They wanted 70 or 80 grand. Now it's amazing to me, at what point do they fix like the parks and the roads and kill the weeds and straighten out the city? If they got $15,000 to throw into a homeless building, what the city of Marysville has become for this yuba-sutter area is a sanctuary for the homeless. You've heard about sanctuary cities. We have a sanctuary for the homeless. And so what we have is 14 Forward, which is a boondoggle that the county put together and spent about a couple $100,000 on. Now you got Habitat for Humanity, who's cashing in on all these streams of money from the county and the city, and they're remodeling a building that should have been burned down at the base of the 10th Street Bridge, right next to a senior citizens housing project, and going to put in a homeless operation in there. If I was running that senior citizen place with all these elderly people coming in and out of there, that would be the last thing I would want next door to me. So anyway, we got a situation going with the city that is blowing money left and right. Now, the latest thing, and you can read about it also in the territorialdispatch.biz, B-I-Z, is about the deer dog drama. And dog owners, they don't know how, or why they got a letter, or how the city found them, but they've been getting these anonymous letters. In other words, they aren't Dear Lou Benninger, they're Dear Dog Owner, and they're not signed by anybody. They're just at the bottom. It just says Finance Department, and it tells them that and it doesn't name their dog. It just says, because you own a dog, you owe us $6 per year if the dog has been altered or tuned up, and if the dog is au natural, then you owe us $25, right? Because I guess they're harder to handle, those dogs. And if you don't do it right away within the next 30 days from the time you get this letter, we're going to add $10. So there, how about a finger in the eye with salt on it? So people are wondering, well, gosh, what are we paying for? You mean it's just another income stream for the city? And so people started looking up the ordinance, and it said in the state of California that cities aren't supposed to charge dog owners unless they're providing a service to dog owners. So when the owners of dogs called the city and asked the secretaries there, the office people, what services do you provide? They said, we don't provide services for animals and animal owners. You have to call the county. But the county's not getting the money. It's the city. And so when they called, the city people called, city dwellers called the county, they said, we live in the city. What services do you provide the city? The County Animal Control Office, or Animal Care Services, they call it, under Yuba County Sheriff's Department, said, we do not serve the city. They don't serve any city. They don't serve Wheatland either. So it's interesting that the city is tagging these dog owners. And for instance, my friends that live in the county, in Yuba County, said, Lou, the way it works in the county is Yuba County sends us a letter that's to my name. It names you, Dear Susie, and then it names the dog that they're writing about. Maybe the dog's name is Fido. Just a unique name a dog might have. Susie and Fido. They says, Dear Susie, Fido's license is up for renewal. Please send in this amount and proof of rabies certificate or whatever, right? Because if you want to go on the Yuba County Sheriff's website and look up animal care services, man, there's like a list of like 20 different services they provide. Clinics, caring for the dog. If they find an injured dog, they'll even haul him to the vet. I mean, it's all kinds of services they provide in the county. But the city does not have those services, but They're wanting another cash stream. Now, recently they started a $75 per business fee for the fire department to come in and see whether you're operating your business in a safe way, fire-wise. The question people are asking is, when we pay our taxes to the city, our general taxes to the city and county, what do we get in return? Like, how come? It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and you pay for a meal and then everything's added. Oh, you want a fork? Oh, that's 50 cents. You want a knife? Oh, well, that's another 50 cents. Oh, you want a napkin? Like in Vietnam, they don't give napkins. If you want a napkin in Vietnam where I go, you got to pay for it, right? And if you want a cup of water or a glass of water, you pay extra. If you want a refill on the water, you pay extra, right? In other words, if we did that in the private enterprise world and we charge add-on charges, right? So it seems like that what we pay our taxes for is bureaucrats, and then any kind of public service we got to pay extra for. I'll be back in just a minute.
I think I'm about 9 weeks pregnant, and I'm thinking about adoption. Can you guys help with that?
Unfortunately, no. No, we don't. Google you should go online and Google adoption agencies, okay?
Did you have any questions regarding an appointment?
Well, I just don't know what I would have an appointment for because you don't have any of the services I actually need.
Okay. Then I apologize. You may be able to find that information on Google.
On Google, okay.
Like, do you have any parenting resources at all?
I could Google it for you and see, but you could Google it yourself.
What I can do is I can maybe Google something for you and give you reference numbers.
Okay, yeah, could you?
Where you can go.
Yeah. Are there any pregnancy services at all at that Planned Parenthood in Cedar Rapids?
No, not unless you were planning on terminating a pregnancy. That's really the only services that we would be able to offer.
Oh, you don't have adoption services at Planned Parenthood?
No. You can go to your local health department, or you can go on Google, and I'm sure they would have information for adoption services in your area.
So no ultrasounds? Okay. Is there any other clinic you can refer me to?
I don't know of anything. I would look around on the internet. We don't do any ultrasounds for prenatal care. We do them when we're doing abortions, but not for any other reason.
We would give you a list of different OBs that you could call, or you can just go online and just Google OBs, doctors, and they'll give you a list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you guys, do you have ultrasounds in your clinic? Could I get
only
one?
during a termination, because that's the only service that we do. We don't do any prenatal care or adoption here.
All right. Well, we're launching into our last hour for today. We'll end at noon. And I was talking about the city of Marysville. Everything in life rises and falls on the quality of leadership, and that's a family, a business, a church, government, any kind of nonprofit organization. And you've all seen it happen. You've seen a restaurant that changes hands, and your favorite restaurant, and then all of a sudden it's not what it used to be, just different people running it, and pretty soon it goes out of business. And then when it gets purchased by someone else, they hang up a sign and say under new management. And that's to let everybody know, if you had a bad meal over here, come back and try us one more time, because we ain't those boys that ran it before. So the city of Marysville has been run into the ground over numerous decades of bad decisions. In fact, I felt there's a curse on the city, because even if you flipped a coin on the decisions, you'd have a 50-50 chance to get it right. But you can't make this many decisions wrong consistently without something being screwy in the spiritual realm. That said, recently, the park at the corner of 10th and Yuba Street, and also bordered by Ramirez, it becomes Simpson Lane, has been getting a major overhaul. It was like a lot of parks in Marysville that have been here for 100 years. over 100 years. Many trees get old and diseased. It just happens, and you need to remove them. So they finally got around to removing them on the park on Yuba and 10th Street. And it was a mess because there's so much rain, it was just all torn up, like a destruction zone over there. And so they removed all these trees. And then as soon as the rain slowed down, I thought they were going to continue to work on, there's some beautiful palm trees in this park, old palms, but they need to have the dried fronds removed. And I thought they were going to remove those fronds because if they fall, if the frond hits you, they're heavy and they could actually hurt someone. And they're just a mess. And so what good that was done in the park is negated a bit by the unkept palm trees. So anyway, instead of trimming the palm trees, they went ahead and went in and put in new irrigation for the entire park. So that means if you drive in there now with heavy vehicles, you're liable to break up your plumbing or run over the heads of your irrigation to do the palm trees. So I was asking Stephanie McKenzie, the city councilwoman from Marysville, what was up? And she said, Lou, I thought the same exact thing. What in the world? It doesn't make any sense. Now, you ever notice government does things that doesn't make any sense? And if you did it in the private sector, it would actually cost you money and you're liable to get yourself fired. So she said, I asked the community services guy why in the world they would do that. He said, well, I don't know, they didn't have money for it, but he said it wasn't planned to trim up those palms. You've noticed palms when they're freshly trimmed, they just look really beautiful. But these just look funky, and there's a bunch of them. And so the other issue is that the Bobbsey twins, Mayor Scamilloa and Walter Munchheimer, are refusing to water the parks. Now, the problem with the city of Marysville is they can tell the administration to do something, and the administration just ignores them. I'll give you an example. The city council had to tell the city of Marysville administration to buy their legal ads. You know how the city and county has to buy legal ads occasionally to publicize something? Well, when they do that, newspapers, particularly the Appeal Democrat, has screwed the government and the taxpayer by charging egregious high rates. So eventually when the Territorial Dispatch, which is critical of government, where the Appeal Democrat has their DNA on the backside of government, the Territorial Dispatch, their legal ad rates are 35 to 40% cheaper for the same ad that you'd run in the Appeal Democrat. But the government won't run the ads in the Territorial because it doesn't like it if there's an article in the Territorial that criticizes or questions the government's actions. And so that kind of situation has been going on, and so the city council actually took it upon themselves to instruct the administration of the city, who serves at the pleasure of the city council, told them to buy ads if they're cheaper from the cheapest place, which in this case is the Territorial Dispatch. And the city council, even though they told the city administration that, the city administration has never bought an ad from the Territorial Dispatch. Now, that's interesting. In other words, they flipped the bird to the city council of Marysville. So now, I was telling Stephanie the other day, I said, if three of you council members want to water the parks, which Scamillo and Munchheimer don't want to water the parks. Now, why do we just go in and put new irrigation lines in and plant new trees? Now, interesting enough, former Fish and Game guy, Dale Whitmore, who's on the city council, he led when he got in there as city council a couple terms ago, he took on a lot of projects to beautify the city. They're just volunteer projects where he got people to volunteer their time, donate money, and they planted, a couple hundred trees. The city council then the city administration wouldn't water the parks. So after all that work, the trees died. Many of the trees died. So now this year, after we've had all this rain, and they've either have young trees again, or they want to keep other young trees from dying, Whitmore and McKenzie wants the administration to water the parks. Now, whether Bill Simmons or Chris Pedigo will join the other two city council people against Munchheimer and Scamayoa, they just need to say, water the darn parks. We want the parks watered. Now, what they just did is gave $15,000 to Habitat for Humanity on top of what the county just gave is a couple $100,000. They could have used that $15,000 to water the parks. You know, it's interesting to me. The city just continues to kick the residents of the city to the curb. They raise taxes on them. They take the taxes that they already pay, and then they give it away to homeless people. What's up with that? Instead of like fixing the park. So people that are families and want to use a park, they got to drive to Yuba City to find a decent park that actually there's no garbage in and is mowed and things are safe, playground equipment safe. They're not going to have some frond off some old palm tree fall on the top of their kid. But instead of serving the public, it seemed like there's more interest in drug addicts and alcoholics and vagrants and wooing them here and coddling them than taking care of the very people that actually makes this city function. I want to move on now and talk about the county. And I heard this last week that the fire chief of Olivehurst Fire Department, was fired by Olivehurst Public Utility District. So I thought, I wonder why that happened. Because I work with all the fire chiefs in the trauma intervention program. So I thought, I wonder why that happened. I'm going to find out. So I called a couple people and found out that he wasn't fired, but he resigned. And that he had been on administrative leave for what I don't know. But when he came back off administrative leave, he'd been back at work for a short period of time, and he presented a letter to Olivehurst Public Utility District, which oversees the fire department of Olivehurst. He sent a resignation letter. So that leaves that department with just a couple paid employees, and with the rest of them volunteer, which is nothing wrong with volunteers. A lot of all the smaller departments around this area, Wheatland, Linda, Marysville, all the foothill departments are all volunteer, and they're dedicated and good people. In fact, most fire departments in the United States still employ volunteers. But the interesting thing is the let's see, what do we got to do? I want to play. Let me stop. I'm not following my script here. Hold that fire department deal. I'm going to come back and talk about it. But right now, I've been noticing commercials by the California Teachers Association fighting vouchers, and that these rich people are going to come in and take all the money out of the schools, leave all the crappy kids in the public schools, and all the good kids will come to these other schools, and they're just making a mockery of the concept of vouchers. And I want to play this clip by a California school teacher talking about why good teachers want school choice.
What if schools had to compete for students in the same way that businesses have to compete for customers? Would schools get better or worse? There's no need to guess. In almost every state and city where there is competition today, educational outcomes improve, often dramatically. This competition is called school choice, and many states and cities now embrace it. With the old model under which most American children still live, the government, not the parent, decides which school children will attend. Now here's how school choice works. The money follows the student. Every child receives funding that their parents can direct to the school of their choice, public, private, charter, or even homeschool. According to researchers at the University of Arkansas, in the most comprehensive study done to date, students in school choice programs saw their reading and math scores improve by 27% and 15% respectively. Sounds like something we should get behind, doesn't it? But for millions of families in my home state of California and in many others, school choice is not a choice. And there's one reason why. teachers' unions. I've been a teacher for 28 years and served as a leader in a local affiliate of the California Teachers Association, so I've seen this problem from the inside. Teachers in California public schools are coerced to pay dues to the teachers' union. True, we cannot be forced to join, but we are forced to pay the union. Their fees are mandatory and expensive. In California alone, the unions raise over $300 million every year. What do the unions do with all that money? They lobby the government for more money for public education. That might sound good, but it's really just a smokescreen. The National Center for Education Statistics reports that since 1970, public school attendance in the U.S. has gone up by just 5%, while public school employment has gone up 95%. More public school employment means more dues for the unions, but does it mean better schools? Certainly not in California, which ranks 45th in the nation in reading and math, despite spending over $55 billion a year on education. That's over 52% of the state's total budget. Yet rarely is anyone held accountable for these dismal results. I've personally seen excellent new teachers lose their jobs while incompetent and even abusive veteran teachers keep theirs because of the union's infamous last in, first out, layoff and tenure rules. For these reasons and more, parents almost always prefer school choice when allowed to choose. This is obviously true for wealthy parents who can afford to send their children to any school they want, but it's equally true for middle class and poor parents when they have a choice. And here's the real giveaway. Public school teachers are less likely to send their children to public schools when given the choice. Why are most school choice options better? Because teachers at these schools are free from the union's stifling work rules. In short, they're free to teach. And the administrators at these schools are also free to reward good teachers and fire bad ones. The teachers' unions don't like school choice because it means less money and less power for them. That's why they'll say anything, do anything, and spend any amount to stop it, whether in the halls of the legislature, on the campaign trail backing pro-union candidates, or on TV with sweet-sounding commercials. During my public school teaching career, I have worked alongside many other teachers to reform the unions from within. Only when we realized that this wasn't possible did we take our case to a higher power, literally, all the way to the United States Supreme Court. The argument behind our lawsuit, Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association, was simple. Teachers should be able to decide for themselves without fear or coercion whether or not to fund or join a union. Unfortunately, in a split 4-4 decision, we lost. But I haven't lost hope because the unions and the politicians do not ultimately have the power. We do. If you believe, like me and millions of others, that parents, not the government, should decide where their children go to school and that competition will make all schools better, then join the school choice movement. We can have good schools for all our children. We just have to make the choice. For choice. I'm Rebecca Friedrichs, mother and California public school teacher for Prager University.
All right, this is Lou Benninger. You listen to Live with Lou, and we have a, you're going to write it down? Okay. So, we have a caller on the line. Why don't you just, okay, put him on. We got Zach on the line. Zach, you on the line?
Hey, Lou, I'm right here with you.
All right. Do you want to make a comment on that clip? Is that what you're calling for?
Yeah, it kind of hit me really hard because obviously I have children going through the public education system right now. And my entire kids last week were spending a week preparing for next week, which is the bubble fill-in test week. And they do that probably about 4 to 6 times a year now. Mind you, when I was going through the education system, it was maybe once a year.
So preparing for being tested?
Yeah, the statewide funding testing, basically.
Right. So in school choice, would you be in favor of getting your kids into a private school and having a voucher to fund your child going into, in other words, if you found a school you thought, let's try this one?
Exactly. It's nothing against public schools. I mean, it's just their system is a god-awful failure that's to me, I think based on the almighty dollar, and which isn't a bad thing, but at the same time, it's propagandized. What they're teaching these kids is pure dribble, and then they bring that throughout their entire life. Like, I'm afraid next year, the oldest boy of my girlfriend, he's going to be going through United States history, so I'm wondering what kind of things they're going to be teaching him.
Where are you calling from? What county?
Nevada County, Lou.
You got any options up there?
I got a few up here, buddy. There's a couple of private schools. Charter schools are popping up. I don't know a lot about the charter school system in general, but from what I hear, they have a different kind of curriculum that will specialize to a certain child's needs. Like, some kids are just hyperactive and don't really want to sit and share in a structured settlement. Well, they find a different way of teaching a child the same lessons, but in a different way.
Well, you might want to check into. There are some public school charter schools. There, in other words, you could go to them without any added costs, but they just operate differently, and you can be maybe that would be an option for the time being until we get vouchers passed in the state of California,
which hopefully does happen very soon.
Yeah, usually the because there are, I don't know whether it's 1,000 teachers or something like that, or 100,000 teachers. I don't know how it's $1,000 dues, I think, per teacher, and there's like 100,000 of them. It's an incredible millions and millions of dollars that are coming in the teachers union. And so that money goes into saying vouchers are bad, vouchers are bad, vouchers are bad. Kids are going to suffer. Kids are going to die. And so people in the state of California continue to vote. Well, we can trust the teachers, right? And then they vote against vouchers. And anyway, even the NAALCP, the National Association of Liberal Colored People, have come out against vouchers. And it's crazy because black people, particularly in the urban areas, want vouchers because their kids are in crappy schools. But the NAALCP is always against them. So anyway, thanks for calling, Zach.
Hey, of course, buddy.
Okay, take it easy. See you later.
You too.
All right. So, that's the situation is there's options, but the only people, like, for instance, you always notice, like, people like Barack Obama was against the Washington, D.C. voucher program that ran for a few years under George Bush's blessing, and then he cut it off. The major beneficiaries of that voucher system were black children, which is there's a high population of blacks living in the Washington, D.C. suburbs or certain neighborhoods of that area. And so those families obviously felt disenfranchised by the first black parents. I wanted to go back to the park situation in Marysville and mention the fact that the city of Marysville is making one bad decision after another, and including letting the parks, with this increased money they have, is they claim they're going to improve the parks, but this summer, even though they wrote an article in the paper saying they're going to improve the parks, this summer they're not going to water the parks, which I think is just totally bizarre. Today, one good thing that's happening is the Key Club, which is a club of high school students that's located on many campuses in the Yuba-Sutter area, are out with a group of volunteers, adults, painting over the graffiti in Yuba City, Marysville, Sutter, and Yuba County area. So way to go, Key Club, and we hope I helped make the list of the spots to take care of, so I hope they get it all done and give me back a list with nothing on it by the end of the day when I get out of here finishing the radio program. So we have a half an hour left, but we're going to have to take another set of commercials, and we'll be right back.
Venezuelan bakers have been caught baking brownies. Venezuelan Socialist President Nicolas Maduro is sending in troops to keep order and punish dissenters. What is their crime? Are they planning a coup? Is it a revolution? No, it's something apparently far, far worse. Venezuelan bakers have been caught baking brownies. I'm not making this up. It's the latest chapter in Venezuela's socialist experiment gone wrong. tragedy is now farce. The Venezuelan government wants to control the price of bread, keeping it artificially low despite high demand. Bakers can't make enough money to keep baking bread, so they bake other things like brownies, where they can charge whatever they want. Baking brownies, bakers have an incentive to keep baking, which means they bake more, and consumers can actually keep getting the food they need to live. Maduro's socialists, so dangerously naive, don't like this at all, and they intend to fix it at the point of a gun. They think prices are arbitrary, the result of greedy capitalists trying to exploit workers. But prices are essential to keep allocating the resources that feed people. When you do away with prices or try to control them too rigidly, the economy stops, which is precisely what's happened in Venezuela. Now, instead of using resources productively, the government is actually using military thugs to arrest bakers for not baking enough bread. So the people go hungry. This is socialism in practice. Socialism kills.
All right. I want to finish up talking about Oliver's Fire and the. I think what I'm going to say about the situation with the fire departments and police departments is an indication of how dysfunctional government is. It doesn't have a reflection on the personnel, the people that serve our communities. It's really a reflection on mismanagement, and when government makes choices, they don't think in terms of what's the most efficient, the most cost-effective, and the best way to serve. That's why you get, in a small community like Yuba-Sutter, you end up with about 5 different law enforcement agencies, and you end up with many more little pothole fire departments. So Oliver's Fire started in about 1947, 48, all volunteer fire department up until about almost the 90s, I think, and they hired a chief. And they've flirted with the idea of going to a full or more paid department, and they tried to get the residents to self-assess themselves $100 to $200 more a year to pay for more full-time paid firefighters. They wouldn't do that. So they've got a few hired folks out there. They have one station. So let's look at it this way. Yuba City Fire, they serve about 70,000 people, and they have 5 stations, and they have one chief and a secretary and a part-time secretary, a full-time part-time secretary, and then they have an admin guy, Bill Fuller. Then you look in Yuba County in the same type of an area. Marysville's 12,000. Say Olivehurst and Linda's about 30,000. You have about 4 to 5 stations covering less than Yuba City does. Yuba City uses one chief that makes a lot of money, a couple $100,000 a year. So in Marysville, they have one station. They have one chief. Linda has 2 major stations and then a 3rd volunteer station. They have one chief. Then you just drive another mile up the road, and Olivehurst has one station and one chief. All these chiefs are making between $100,000 and $200,000 a year. Wouldn't it make sense? Now, in private business, if you were going to bid to take care of the fire needs of Marysville, Linda, and Olivehurst, wouldn't you maybe have one chief and just a number of stations under them, just like you have in Yuba City? You have 5 stations under one chief. So what's happened here now is they've lost their chief in Olivehurst. They serve about, I was talking to someone who thought, I couldn't find it on the internet. They don't say on their website how many square miles they serve. Marysville Fire serves about 4 miles, say, square miles. In the city, it's 3.2 or 3.4 miles. They go outside the city a little bit. Say 3 to 4 miles, square miles, Marysville. They say that Olivehurst is 4 to 6 square miles. Linda serves 52 square miles. This is the odd thing. Now, it would be natural for Linda, their chief, to oversee all these stations, which is fewer than Yuba City and fewer population than Yuba City, and have one chief's pay and maybe have an assistant instead of 3 major chiefs' pay. And then have more of a paid service, fire service. Now, over the last year or so, there's been times when nobody in Olivehurst responded to a call. They just, Yuba County Sheriff dispatches for Olivehurst and Linda. But there's been times when in the area of the unincorporated area called Olivehurst that they dispatched them and no one responded. And so then the dispatch center called Chief Webb at Linda and asked them to respond to another district. There are things called mutual aid where fire departments help one another out when they get too busy or when, say, it's a major fire, they team up. But in this case, it was just simply they just didn't respond. So Olivehurst Fire has been struggling for many, many years with service to their area. And so it's being overseen by the Olivehurst Public Utility District. One alternative would be to remove the fire department from the Olivehurst Public Utility District and put it in a fire district and overseen by Linda. They have a board of directors over the Linda Fire District. Maybe they could term it something. They could still call the engine Olivehurst Fire or the equipment Olivehurst Fire, but the firefighters would serve like another station. Linda right now has a Plumas Lake station, a brand new beautiful station down there. It's got a station on Scales Avenue, and it's got a third station that volunteers can pick up engines at. But it even makes sense for Marysville. You know, my hope was that Marysville would actually merge with Linda. But the sad thing about government is frequently politics prevails over people, over the best practices for people. Politics prevails over best practices and what's best for the people and how they spend their tax dollars. So when you look at all these little podunk, you know, you have one little fire department cover 3 to 4 square miles, another one covering 4 to 6 miles, and you have a separate board over every one of these. Like we have the city council that oversees the one station in the city of Marysville. It's just really a waste of taxpayers' dollars the way they do it. They claimed recently that they saved a lot of money by not using CAL FIRE taking over Marysville Station. They'd done it for about a dozen years, 10 years, 12 years. So they went back to doing their own station. They say they now saved money doing that. But the fact is, the most sane way to do it is to merge all 3 fire departments into a name of create a name for the fire district and have it overseen by, say, somebody like Fire Chief Richard Webb, who is one of the most respected fire leaders in either Yuba or Sutter counties. Hey, I wanted to, let's see how many, we got a few minutes left. I noticed in the paper that the Yuba County is laying off 12 workers in their social services department that assists adults that need help in the home. And I was fascinated by that because usually you don't see government laying off people. But if you studied the pension problem in California, you can see that each city and county is eventually going to go broke because the pension, what they call PERS, the Public Employee Retirement System, or CalSTRS, which is the California, it's CalPERS or CalSTRS. CalSTRS is for teachers, CalPERS is for all the other folks. They have, it's a bad system, it's a corrupt system, it's a system that's broken. Its actuarials are what it's predictings on how much they need the counties to chip in each year is based upon 7.5% return on investment, but they only annually generate up less than 1% return on investment. So that means that the counties and cities have to continually backfill or take money out of the general fund, that the general funds are there for parks, infrastructure, sewage, water mains, all this stuff, hydrants, fire, police, and they're taking money out of that to fulfill pension pledges that politicians made to unions to get plush pensions for these unions that now we can no longer sustain. So recently, in the last few days, there's been I think it was 2 days ago or the day before yesterday, something like that. I don't know. The county says we're going to lay off 12 workers, but they're not going to cut services. So I thought, I'm interested in that. Laying off people. No, I don't want harm. It's sad when people get laid off, but hey, it's a part of life. And some people may say, well, that didn't never happen to you. Hey, I worked for a church during the recession, and we laid off half of the entire staff to make it. In fact, I went off staff eventually and to make it work out there financially. We made it work, and I found other employment that's worked out for me better. So the cool thing is the county is subcontracting or outsourcing some of the services that the county employees were doing to a private contractor. And I'm thrilled about that. And way to go, Robert Bendorf, and way to go, supervisors, because the state of California, the legislators are not interested in changing the pension system. It's going to go broke. So it's kind of like saying, hey, we're driving way too fast. It's a slippery road. There's a lot of curves. We either slow down and make it to our destination, or we're just going to go over the cliff. And everybody seems to be determined to go over the cliff on this pension thing. So in the meantime, one way that local councils and local boards of supervisors can survive is to shrink their employment group and subcontract things out. Then you don't have to pay any pensions. For instance, if you could subcontract out your police department, you could get out from under any pensions because you just pay a certain amount for the policing of the city, or a certain amount. What you can pick whatever department you want to do: public works, parks, police, fire. There are privately owned or privately run fire departments that contract with counties for unincorporated areas. There's lots of ways to do things. So I thought it was a sign of progress that the Yuba County is looking at doing this. Also, the jail in Sutter County, and I think the jail is probably going to do this in Yuba County, it remains to be seen the quality. But honestly, folks, it remains to be seen the quality whenever you have your own employees. If you can't fire your own employees, you're going to end up with lousy quality. That doesn't mean that all the employees are lousy. I work with county employees every week that are amazing, and I think they're worth every nickel they get. The problem is when you get a bad employee, or the employee is only half bad. When an employee isn't good, you need to be able to let them go. Just say, you're a nice person, but you're not doing a good job for us. We feel we can get somebody to do a better job. That's how it works in a private sector. And so the Sutter County Jail has hired a private firm, California Forensic Medical Group, to come in and take over all the jail, all the hiring, the firing, the medical, the buying of the pharmacy products, the medicines, all that stuff. Take care of everything. No more headache. Just they go in and just serve. And if you don't like them, you can just fire them and hire Brand X, right? And hire another firm to do it. There's other firms that'll be out there to take their place if they don't do a good enough job. There's always somebody coming up with a better mousetrap. Now, there's talk that since Dr. Cassidy left, it's never been the same at Yuba County Jail, and there's talk of them going with California Forensic Medical Group as well. We'll see. We'll see how that works. Again, it's a way to cut costs, and the problem is in county, state, and federal government is a whole employment fiasco. People, basically, it's just like welfare. You're guaranteed a living for life, even until you and even while you leave employment and retire for 20 or 30 years, if you last that long, we're going to pay you just like you worked for us. In fact, I just saw somewhere, I didn't bring the article, but some firefighters and cops down in some county in California were getting up to $300,000 in retirement pay. That's amazing. That's a lot of money, particularly when you're not contributing anything. You got paid well while you contributed, and then you get paid really well while not contributing. And I thought that is a part of the problem. So what we have here is we have a problem in the way we employ people in government. And the politicians have no backbone to change that and to buck the unions because they want to stay employed themselves, the politicians. That's the same thing you have with Trump wanting to drain the swamp. The swamp itself is full of people that call themselves conservatives, but they don't act like it ever. They always act like a liberal, but they call themselves a conservative so they can win the votes of people that don't like liberal policies. You with me? So we'll see what Oliver's Fire does, whether they do, whether the Oliver's Public Utility District is real turfy and kingdom oriented, or whether they want to do what's best for the rest, what's best for the people of Olivehurst, and create a fire system that serves them and gets there on time, never misses a call, and serves them well. And maybe Olivehurst Public Utility District will get out of the fire business forever, just like the county of Yuba is going to turn a part of their adult services over to a private contractor that specializes in that kind of work. So I think that's a pretty good idea. Okay, let's see. We got a few minutes left. Let me mention again, I want you to write President Trump. And so let me give you that information. So if you just came into the show late and you want to do something to encourage the president, maybe you voted for President Trump and you're thinking, whoa, this is getting wild. This is a wild fight out there. And you don't know what to believe. There's lies. In fact, I got a kick out of it. They hadn't even left for Saudi Arabia on this trip. And the media was already calling the trip a failure. Isn't that amazing? That's what we call fake media. So another word for fake media is they're liars, right? So if you want Trump, you better decide you're willing to. You can't just say, oh, we like Trump, Mr. Trump, go fight him and get out your pump and drain the swamp. You're going to have to cooperate and you're going to have to participate in draining the swamp. Just like I told you to send some money down to these recall efforts in Southern California of these guys that voted for the road tax and got it passed. You need to write President Trump. Bobby Conner, the prophet that was at Glad Tidings last week, said, let's write the president. We need to write him and encourage him. So you can call Monday through Friday. I think it's 8 to 4 Eastern time at 202-456-1111. Or you can write by going to White House, one word, whitehouse.gov/contact. That'll bring you into an area that you can just fill it out on your computer on an email. Very simple. I've done it in probably less than 2 minutes. Did my whole thing, filled in the little box. You write the little letter and email it out. And then if you want to do snail mail, which they'll take it, but they want it a certain way, if you can do it, is type it so they can read, so they don't have to decipher your handwriting, on an 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper. And if not type on a computer, then print it by hand. And then include your return address on the letter itself as well as your envelope in case the letter and the envelope gets separated and they want to write you back. They might want to write you back. Include an email address because they might use an email address to write you back. And you can, if you're going to do snail mail, send it to the White House, 3 words, the White House, at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600. And at the end of Pennsylvania Avenue, put NW, Northwest, NW, Washington, D.C., 20500, 20500. Don't just put the White House, Washington, D.C. What that does, then it throws the Postal Service off in their automation, and it takes longer to get there. So send them an encouraging note. Maybe you can send them a note that would say, I'm praying for you, or I'm still behind you, or drain the swamp. Like I said, drain the damn swamp. That's what I told them. Let's drain it. So you can do that, and that would be good as well. I'm just looking for some. Oh, did you realize we got 5 minutes? We got more? Oh, we got 8 minutes. Good. Man, I saw an article in the Sacramento Bee that really got my attention. You know, I was a youngster when they built the Oroville Dam, but I remember them building it. And I didn't realize this, but the Sacramento Bee had it was a long article and a great article that it wrote up. They went back and looked at the archives of the Oroville Dam, the whole, the advertising and the whole public relations campaign to get it started. Did you know that the Oroville Dam, when it was originally planned, include a steam train and a monorail and a major resort featuring a 250-seat restaurant and a 1,000-seat amphitheater? That just blew my mind. And they predicted that as many as 5 million visitors a year would show up at that Oroville Dam when they built that thing back in the 1960s. Isn't that amazing? And they were talking about in this article how bummed out that the Butte County and Oroville residents are, that they feel like, in other words, I was bummed that the dam has been ignored, the maintenance on the dam, and a lot of us in Yuba and Sutter County feel like we've been ripped off by the Department of Water Resources and the politicians. But the Butte County people have a unique axe to grind with the Department of Water Resources. They feel like they got sold a bill of goods. Something like 44,000 acres of property were covered with water. All that property was taxable income. That those revenues, those property taxes came into the city, in the county, and the city benefited from that at Oroville. And that money, when that property was sold to the state, those taxes ended at that time. And so the county, in that way, lost a lot of revenue for welcoming or hosting the Oroville Dam. But when all these, they thought, well, we'll make it up in 5 million tourists a year, and basically it was supposed to be a what do they call these places, like a Disneyland, a place, an entertainment area that would be second only to Disneyland in California. That's the way it was portrayed. So later, it says the state, in this article, the state's inability to live up to its part of the bargain has long fostered resentment, frustration, and cynicism about California Department of Water Resources. And February spillway failures at Oroville Dam, which forced thousands of residents to abandon their homes and jobs for 2 days, only made the relations worse. State officials insist that they will make Oroville Dam safe again, and they say that the 1960s documents were planning concepts, not promises. Isn't that interesting how government does that? Somehow, now why do you think the leaders, we're not talking about just some old guy smoking weed down by the Feather River thought this. We're talking about the leaders of Butte County and the city of Oroville believed that these were promises the government was making. The Oroville Dam people, California Department of Water Resources, they acknowledge they have to overcome historic skepticism in Butte County. DWR Chief Deputy Director Cindy Messer said at a town hall meeting, I know that this is going to be a big task on our part. In 1966, state officials wrote a memo pledging, this is not just an idea, but pledging to build 1,500 parking spaces outside the auditorium in Oroville where they were meeting, in this graffitied auditorium in downtown Oroville. If you know Oroville, you know what I mean. it said they needed those spaces to accommodate the steam train that would shuttle hordes of visitors to the reservoir 6 miles away. Once there, they'd hop on a monorail for a tour of the lake's multitude of facilities. Can you imagine that? This is 1966. So instead of 5 million people a year, but this is still a lot, right? Oroville Dam has 167 miles of shoreline. They have boat ramps, obviously, beaches, equestrian trails, and campgrounds. It drew nearly 1.2 million people last year. And I guess there's a real visitors tower that has some amazing views. But let's see, it tells how many. They were supposed to have 10 separate recreation areas, a state-of-the-art boating facilities, and in other words, they didn't build everything they promised, right? It's really sad. It's estimated that 60% of all visitors to the facilities will utilize the monorail, and that peak hourly use will approximate 1,000 people per hour. That's what what they said is, we were just talking trash. We weren't promising anything. A 1966 site plan for the Lime Saddle camping area showed 295 campsites. This is a 1966 proposal. Only 45 of those sites were ever built by the Department of Water Resources. So since this damage, they've chummed in a few $1 million. 2 months after this proposal, the only recreation facilities were a few picnic tables and a few campsites, according to Butte County. Well, that's it for this week. We're coming back next week, Lord willing, and we'll thank you for listening, and go out and do something good in the community for someone. See you later.